It is minus 23 degrees outside, the kind of cold that freezes your eyelashes shut in 30 seconds. The kind that kills car engines, splits firewood by itself, and turns exposed skin into a medical emergency within minutes. And right now, a man is standing inside his hand-built shelter in a t-shirt. No furnace, no electric heat, no propane, no grid connection of any kind. The thermometer on his wall reads 69 degrees Fahrenheit. He has a cup of coffee in his hand. And outside, less than half a mile away, his neighbor's pipes just burst for the second time this winter. I'm going to show you everything he did, every decision, every layer, every material. And more importantly, I'm going to show you every single mistake that everyone else is making that causes them to freeze, fail, and spend 10 times more money trying to fix a problem that never needed to exist. Because here's the truth nobody in the homesteading or off-grid world wants to say out loud. Most people build their Quonset completely backwards. They spend money in the wrong places. They insulate in the wrong sequence. They choose the wrong shape, the wrong orientation, the wrong heat source. And then they wonder why they're still cold, still spending a fortune on fuel, and still fighting their structure instead of living in it. This builder did none of that. He started with physics. He let the math lead every choice. And what he ended up with is one of the most efficient cold weather shelters ever built by a single person with a modest budget. Let's go from the ground up. Before we talk about what he built, you need to understand why everything else fails. Walk through any traditional log cabin in serious winter country. Beautiful structure, romantic, feels like history. And it has one fatal design flaw baked into its very DNA. Log walls breathe. That sounds like a good thing. It is not. In a severe cold climate, a wall that breathes is a wall that bleeds heat. Warm interior air is constantly migrating to the wood, hitting the cold exterior face, and depositing moisture inside the wall cavity. That moisture freezes. It expands. It slowly destroys the structure from the inside without a single visible symptom until the damage is already catastrophic. And then there's the roof. Most conventional cabins use a pitched roof with shallow angle attic space and fiberglass bat insulation between the rafters. That system works reasonably well in mild climates. In deep winter country, it is a disaster in slow motion. Heat rises, always, without exception, which means the ceiling is where 70% of your thermal energy tries to escape every single hour of every single day. And a shallow pitch roof with compressed fiberglass insulation, which loses roughly 40% of its rated R value once temperatures drop below freezing, is essentially a thermal sieve sitting directly over your living space. The builders who figure this out eventually throw more money at the problem. A second wood stove, a propane backup, electric baseboard heat as emergency insurance. And suddenly what was supposed to be a simple, self-sufficient shelter has turned into a monthly fuel budget that would make a suburban homeowner wince. This man looked at all of that and said, no. He went back to first principles. He asked one question that almost nobody asks before they break ground. What shape retains heat the most efficiently, sheds snow load without assistance, redirects wind rather than resisting it, and can be built by a single person without heavy equipment? The answer has existed since 1941. The Quonset Arch. The original Quonset huts were built for the United States military during World War II. They needed a shelter that could be shipped anywhere in the world as a flat-pack kit, assembled by soldiers with no construction experience, and survive conditions ranging from Pacific typhoons to Arctic winters. The engineers landed on a half-cylinder of corrugated steel. Simple, brutal, genius. That corrugated profile, those repeating ribs running along the length of each panel, adds 300% more structural rigidity compared to flat steel of the same thickness. You can stack an almost unimaginable amount of snow on a properly built Quonset arch, and it does not flex, does not buckle, and does not fail. The load travels down the curve to the ground exactly the way an arch has distributed weight since the Romans built aqueducts. Wind, it's a flat wall and pushes. Wind, it's a curved surface and rolls. The arch does not fight the storm. It redirects it. And here is what matters most for heat retention. The arch has no corners. Corners are thermal weak points. Every 90-degree angle where a wall meets a ceiling is a place where air pools where condensation forms, where insulation is difficult to install correctly, and where heat leaks accumulate. The arch eliminates all of those failure points in a single stroke. The interior surface is continuous. There are no junctions. There are no seams where two different materials meet at a difficult angle. The physics are simply better. This builder understood all of that before he ever ordered a single panel. He spent 3 months planning before he touched the ground. And that planning phase is where most people, including experienced builders, lose the game before it even starts. Foundation first. The instinct for anyone who has watched construction videos is to pour a concrete slab. It looks professional. It feels permanent. It seems like the right foundation for a serious structure. In deep cold country, it is frequently the wrong choice. Concrete is rigid. Frozen ground is dynamic. In permafrost-adjacent soil, the ground heaves in winter and settles in spring, and it does not do so uniformly. One section of your slab rises 2 inches while the adjacent section stays flat, and suddenly you have stress fractures running through the most permanent part of your structure. He used a compacted gravel pad instead. 6 inches of crushed stone, laser-leveled and compacted in layers. On top of that, a grid of pressure-treated timber runners, 6x6 posts, spaced every 4 feet. This system is used throughout the Alaskan interior, in northern Canada, and across Scandinavia, precisely because it handles freeze-thaw cycles without damage. The gravel drains. The timber flexes almost imperceptibly with ground movement. Nothing cracks. Nothing heaves. Nothing fails. The footprint he chose, 16 feet wide, 24 feet long, 384 square feet of enclosed space. That number was not arbitrary. He calculated the minimum volume necessary to live comfortably, sleeping, cooking, working, storing supplies. And then he stopped there. He did not add square footage for the sake of it. He did not plan for future expansion. He built exactly what he needed and nothing more, because in winter, every additional cubic foot of air inside your structure is another cubic foot that your heat source must warm before you feel any benefit. A smaller volume heats faster, holds temperature more easily, and demands less fuel. The efficiency math is ruthless, and it rewards restraint every single time. He also oriented the structure with the open end, the face of the arch, facing south-southeast. That decision costs nothing. It requires nothing except a compass and a willingness to plan. And it means that even in the depths of January, when the sun barely clears the horizon, for hours of low-angle southern light enter that open face and contribute meaningful passive solar heat to the interior. Free energy, permanent, every single day for the life of the structure. The shell went up in 11 days. One man, no crane, no lift equipment, no contractor. The corrugated galvanized panels arrived on a flatbed truck as a kit. Each panel was manageable for a single person to handle, heavy enough to feel solid, light enough to position without assistance. He began at one end, bolted the first arch section together, and let the geometry do the rest. This is the counterintuitive beauty of the arch. It wants to stand up. As you add panels, the structure becomes progressively more rigid and self-supporting. There's a moment somewhere around the 4th or 5th arch section where the entire assembly clicks into stability. It stops feeling like individual pieces and starts feeling like a single monolithic object. Every fastener he used was stainless steel, not galvanized, not zinc-plated. Stainless. In a high-moisture environment like a heated structure in a frozen climate, standard fasteners corrode from the inside out. Stainless costs more up front. It costs nothing for the life of the structure. He sealed every panel joint with butyl tape before bolting. No caulk. Caulk fails in freeze-thaw cycles within 3 to 5 years. Butyl tape remains flexible across a temperature range from -80 to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It never cracks. It never lets go. When the shell was complete, he stood inside it. The arch curved overhead. Light came through the open face. The space felt larger than its dimensions. The acoustics were strange. Sound bounced off the steel in ways that felt industrial and alive. He knew that shell was only the beginning. What happened next was where the real intelligence of the build lived. Most people who build Quonset structures insulate them incorrectly, badly, sometimes catastrophically. The failure mode is always the same. They buy fiberglass bats. They staple them between wooden furring strips attached to steel. And they think they are done. Within 2 winters, the steel is dripping with condensation. The fiberglass is saturated with moisture and has lost most of its insulating value. Rust is forming on the interior face of the panels. The structure smells like a wet basement, and the builder is completely bewildered because he followed what seemed like reasonable logic. The logic was wrong. And here's why. Steel is a perfect thermal conductor. Cold travels through it instantaneously. Warm interior air, which always contains water vapor, hits the cold interior face of steel, and that water vapor immediately condenses into liquid. Every time you breathe inside an inadequately sealed metal structure in winter, you're loading the interior with moisture. The fiberglass holds that moisture like a sponge. The steel corrodes. The insulation fails. The structure deteriorates. The fix is a vapor barrier applied directly to the steel before anything else. This builder sprayed 2 inches of closed-cell polyurethane foam directly onto the interior face of every panel before any other material touched the structure. Closed-cell foam is not merely insulation. It is also a perfect vapor barrier. Once it is cured, it is impermeable to water in any form, liquid or vapor. The condensation problem is gone. Permanently. Not managed. Eliminated. On top of the spray foam, he applied 2-inch rigid rock wool board. Rock wool, which is made from volcanic basalt, not from fiberglass, does not compress under its own weight over time. Fiberglass bats lose approximately 30% of their R value within the first few years, simply because the material compresses and the air pockets that provide insulation collapse. Rock wool does not do this. It is dimensionally stable for the life of the structure. Then came the air gap. He fastened wooden battens directly to the rock wool board, creating a 1-inch air cavity between the insulation and the final interior paneling of pine boards. That gap serves 2 functions simultaneously. First, it eliminates thermal bridging, the phenomenon where fasteners and studs conduct cold from the exterior to the interior, creating cold spots that then attract condensation and cause localized insulation failures. Second, it creates a clean, accessible chase for electrical wiring that never penetrates the vapor barrier. The total thermal performance of that wall and ceiling assembly are 38. That is a code-required minimum for severely cold climate zones in most of Canada and the northern United States. He hit that number with a structure that cost him a fraction of what a conventionally built cabin would require. Now, the heat source. This is a decision that separates this build from every other cold-weather shelter you have seen on this platform, and it is the part that most viewers find genuinely difficult to believe when they first hear it. He heats the entire structure, all 384 square feet, through nights that drop to minus 23 degrees, with 2 hours of fire per day. 2 hours. Now with stove running continuously, not a furnace cycling on and off every 20 minutes. 2 deliberate. Control burns every single day, and then nothing. The structure stays warm on its own for the next 12 hours minimum. The device that makes this possible is a masonry heater. If you have never encountered one, the concept will seem strange at first. A masonry heater is not a stove. It does not look like a fireplace. It is a large, dense mass of stone or brick, in this case, 800 pounds of hand-laid fieldstone, built around a complex internal labyrinth of channels through which combustion gases travel before exiting through the chimney. When he lights the fire, the wood burns at temperatures between 1,400 and 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is far hotter than a conventional wood stove, which typically operates between 400 and 700 degrees. At those high temperatures, combustion is nearly complete. Almost nothing exits the chimney except water vapor and carbon dioxide. There's essentially no smoke. There is almost no creosote. The superheated gases travel through the internal channels of the stone mass. By the time they reach the chimney outlet, they have surrendered the overwhelming majority of their thermal energy to the stone. The exhaust temperature at the chimney cap is typically under 250 degrees, compared to 400 to 600 degrees in a conventional wood stove installation. All of that captured heat is now stored in 800 pounds of thermal mass. Stone does not release heat quickly. It releases it slowly, steadily, evenly, radiating warmth across the entire surface of the heater for 16 to 24 hours after the fire goes out. The surface temperature of the heater never exceeds 160 degrees Fahrenheit, which means it is warm to the touch but not dangerous. No burns, no accidental fire hazard, no keeping children and animals away from a dangerously hot surface. He burns the fire for 90 minutes in the morning and 90 minutes in the evening. He uses approximately 1/3 of the firewood that his neighbors consume running conventional wood stoves continuously. He splits and stacks wood once per season, and his interior temperature never varies by more than 4 degrees in either direction across an entire 24-hour period. Steady, even, effortless. The masonry heater cost him more to build than any other single element of the structure. The stone had to be laid by hand. The internal channels had to be built to precise tolerances, so the draft would pull correctly. It took him 16 days to complete. It will last 100 years without repair. Let's talk about what you take away from this build. Whether you are planning a Quonset structure, a conventional cabin, or anything else you intend to live in through serious winters, volume is your enemy. Every cubic foot of air you add to your living space is a cubic foot you must heat. Resist the temptation to build large. Build exactly what you need. You can always add a separate storage structure or workshop, but keep the heated living volume as compact as function allows. Seal before you insulate. In any metal structure, the vapor barrier is not optional, and it is not the last step. It is the first step. Spray foam directly on the steel before anything else touches the interior surface. This single decision determines whether your structure thrives or deteriorates. Choose insulation that holds its value. Fiberglass is cheap for a reason. Rock wool, rigid foam board, and spray foam all cost more and all maintain their rated performance across decades. The math always favors a more expensive insulation when you calculate total cost over the life of the structure. Thermal mass beats instant heat. A system that stores energy and releases it slowly is always more efficient than a system that generates heat on demand. Whether that is a masonry heater, a rocket mass heater, or a well-designed passive solar wall, mass wins in extreme cold every single time. Orient before you build. A compass costs $3. Taking 20 minutes to determine the correct orientation of your structure before you break ground costs nothing except time. Passive solar orientation can contribute 15 to 25% of your total heating requirement in a well-sealed structure. That is fuel you never have to buy, split, or burn. Protect the arch. The structural integrity of a Quonset depends on the uninterrupted curve of the arch transferring loads smoothly to the foundation. Do not cut skylights into the arch without engineering support for the opening. Do not hang heavy loads from the apex without calculating the load path. The arch is not merely a roof. It is the structural system itself, and every modification must be made with that understanding. This entire structure, foundation, shell, insulation, interior finishing, masonry heater, electrical, and all hardware, came in at just over $4,000. One man built it in 6 weeks working alone, with basic tools, no construction background, and no contractor involvement. 3 winters have now passed. The structure has experienced temperatures as low as minus 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The interior has never dropped below 65. The pipes? He ran them inside the thermal envelope. Another decision almost everyone gets wrong: have never frozen. The steel shows no interior corrosion. The masonry heater performs identically to the day it was first fired. No mechanical failures. No emergency repairs. No fuel deliveries in the middle of a blizzard. Just physics working correctly, because someone took the time to understand it before picking up a tool. The full material list and supplier breakdown is in the description below. Every item he used, exactly where he sourced it, and what he paid in current pricing. If you are planning a build, any build, drop your specific question in the comments. Location, climate zone, budget, whatever you are working with. Read every single one. The answer might not come immediately, but it will come. And if you're still watching this right now, you already know more about cold weather shelter design than 95% of people who will attempt this. That knowledge is worth something. Use it. Hit subscribe. New video drops every week. Stay warm.